The situation in Eastern Europe has reached a fever pitch, with Russia and Belarus brandishing the threat of preemptive military action. This alarming development comes amidst what they perceive as escalating aggression from Western European powers, particularly France, the United Kingdom, and Germany. Sergei Naryshkin, Russia's foreign intelligence chief, delivered a stark warning during talks with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko in Minsk. He stated that any attack on Russia or Belarus would trigger swift and decisive retaliation against NATO, with Poland and the Baltic states in the Kremlin's crosshairs. These pronouncements from Moscow and Minsk have sent shockwaves through the region, raising the specter of a wider conflict. The rhetoric employed by Naryshkin and Lukashenko indicates a willingness to escalate the situation, potentially drawing NATO into a direct confrontation. The potential consequences of such a scenario are dire, threatening to plunge Europe into a conflict unseen since the darkest days of the Cold War. The Kremlin's increasingly bellicose posture appears to be driven by a combination of factors. Domestically, Putin faces growing discontent over the economic fallout from the war in Ukraine. By rallying the Russian people against a common enemy, he aims to strengthen his grip on power and deflect attention from internal problems. On the international stage, Putin seeks to reassert Russia's dominance and challenge the post-Cold War security architecture in Europe. The involvement of Belarus in this escalating crisis adds another layer of complexity. Lukashenko, often dubbed Europe's last dictator, has grown increasingly reliant on Putin's support to maintain his grip on power. In exchange, he has allowed Belarus to be used as a staging ground for Russian military operations, effectively making his country a vassal state of the Kremlin. This dangerous alliance further destabilizes the region and raises the stakes for NATO and its allies. Despite the escalating tensions, diplomatic efforts to defuse the crisis remain ongoing, albeit with limited success. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff recently met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg, hoping to find a path towards a peaceful resolution. While Witkoff emerged from the meeting expressing cautious optimism, his Russian counterpart, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, struck a decidedly more skeptical tone. Lavrov voiced deep concerns about the possibility of a diplomatic trap, suggesting that the West's overtures for dialogue might be a ploy to buy time while they continue to arm Ukraine. This distrustful stance underscores the deep chasm that separates the two sides, making a negotiated settlement seem like a distant prospect. The Kremlin's demand for security guarantees, including a halt to NATO expansion and a rollback of its military presence in Eastern Europe, are seen as non-starters by the West. Adding to the diplomatic impasse is the lack of a unified Western response to the crisis. While the United States and some European countries have provided military aid to Ukraine, others remain reluctant to escalate their involvement. This hesitancy stems from a combination of factors, including economic concerns, dependence on Russian energy, and a desire to avoid provoking a wider conflict. The lack of a coherent and resolute Western strategy plays into Putin's hands.